Good morning to you and a happy new year to everyone. I think, 2017 has been an extremely eventful year for Zimbabwe, particularly towards the tail end. Those very dramatic changes on the political front. President Robert Mugabe, leader of Zimbabwe for 37 years, and who looked set to continue, his rule here. He had been nominated by his party to be the candidate in elections next year, so another 5-year term looked set there. His wife had also been nominated to be the vice president of the party, but the ruling party had been, consumed by factional fighting over a successor to Mugabe. Mugabe fired his vice president. Then that led to a military operation, a very dramatic military intervention that ultimately led to former President Robert Mugabe stepping down, his vice president at the time, Emmerson Mnangagwa, becoming the president of Zimbabwe. And we've now seen these changes where, Emmerson Mnangagwa is now the head of the ruling party, the head of Zimbabwe, and trying to make a lot of changes, particularly on the economic front, which is where most people have been feeling the pain here, which is where most people have been unhappy with former President Robert Mugabe. So very dramatic and unpredictable end to this year, particularly in the month of November, where all this happened.
All right. Farai Mokatuya, live for us in Harare. Well, the world witnessed a dramatic transition of power in Zimbabwe in 2017, as Farai told us. 3 weeks after 75-year-old Emmerson Mnangagwa was sacked as vice president, he managed to make a political comeback and take over the country's presidency. It brought the final curtain down on the 37-year-long rule of Robert Mugabe.
Robert Mugabe is gone.
Thousands of Zimbabweans dance, sing and party on the streets of Harare in celebration of the end of former President Robert Mugabe's 37-year-long rule. The president's downfall started in early November when he unexpectedly fired his then Vice President Emmerson Mnangagwa.
Comrade R.G. Mugabe has exercised his powers to relieve Honorable Vice President E.D. Mnangagwa of his position as Vice President of the Republic of Zimbabwe with immediate effect.
The dismissal of Mnangagwa, who won the support of the army, triggered a military takeover of the government.
Comrade R.G. Mugabe and his family are safe and sound, and their security is guaranteed. We wish to make it abundantly clear that this is not a military takeover of government.
Although they've tried to act as if they're not, but the reality is that they've taken control of the country.
When it comes to matters of protecting our revolution, the military will not hesitate to step in.
Soon after, Mugabe's party removed him as their leader and demanded he step down. Members of parliament then initiated impeachment proceedings. Thousands of protesters took to the streets to demonstrate against Mugabe.
He must go.
Mounting pressure, the loss of his party support and the prospect of impeachment eventually proved too much to bear.
I, Robert Gabriel Mugabe, in terms of Section 96, subsection 1 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe, hereby formally tender my resignation as the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe with immediate effect.
Following Mugabe's resignation, Mnangagwa was sworn in as Zimbabwe's second president.
I solemnly promise that I shall, to the best of my ability, serve everyone who calls and considers Zimbabwe their home.
Mnangagwa acknowledged the task to rebuild a country battered by years of economic decline and political instability.
He carries a lot of baggage from the past. And the question he has to ask himself, to what extent am I going to carry this baggage in the new era?
We're looking forward to a better Zimbabwe with jobs, with no youth on the streets, no queues on the banks, and a better and brighter future for all Zimbabweans.
The 3-week political drama in Zimbabwe has come to an end, yet uncertainties still lie ahead for Mnangagwa and the southern African country. With the next presidential election less than 1 year away, the nation is watching to see how its new leader will demonstrate his abilities to lead the country.
For more on Zimbabwe's political transition, I'm joined now in the studio by Hu Wenping. She's a research fellow from the Institute of West Asian and African Studies at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. Thank you for joining us, and Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
When we look at the unprecedented political developments in Zimbabwe in 2017, can we see 2018 as a new era for this African nation?
Well, I think that's a good hope and a sort of a new era. Actually, you know, the old era is much easier, comparatively speaking, but starting a new era, I think, is more difficult because those new leaders, they have to prove to the people and even prove to his own supporters in the party that they can do much better job than those previous ones. So it takes time. A lot of challenges now, I think, lying ahead of this new president, Mnangagwa, because all those stalemate of those economic issues, now it takes time to prove to the potential investors that it's worth to do the further investment in Zimbabwe. And also those party unity and also unity with how to unify with the opposition party, because the next year, now is the new year already, 2018. Now the election, I think, is the first and the foremost challenge in front of them. So whether they can really embrace a new year, I think still needs time to prove.
Okay, Ms. Hu Wenping, thank you very much. And let's go back to our reporter, Farai Mokatuyu, now in Harare. Farai, the political drama in Zimbabwe in 2017 has come to an end. With the presidential election to be held this year, uncertainty still lies ahead for President Mnangagwa and the country as a whole. So what can we expect for the presidential election? Farai, can you hear me? I'm asking about what we can expect for the presidential. Okay, it sounds like we don't have our connection with Farai Mokatuyu in Harare anymore, so I'll go back to my studio guest, Ms. Hu Wenping. President Mnangagwa has promised to hold the presidential election this year. So how could this influence the democratic process in Zimbabwe?
Well, this peaceful transition itself has proved that I think Zimbabwe, the people there, military party, they all have the same goal. That is to maintain the stability in Zimbabwe and then to develop the second chapter, that is to bring the past, those glories of economic development back. So I think with this consensus reaching, that will be paved a very good foundation for this next election and also the unity between the ruling party and the opposition party. Because now we have seen that there used to be the military commander, the defense minister himself, now is take off his uniform, now becoming the deputy president of the ruling party. So which means the party now military, they would like to share the hands together and also work together to bring those consensus all together. So this is one. Another is the policy itself. This matters very much because the past policy, they chase those white farmers away, and also it's very radical, saying all those foreign investment, they have to give like a 51% high those shareholders to the local. So this is not so welcome, I think, for those foreign investors. But Zimbabwe, they do need a lot of foreign investment in. So, but now the new government is saying, okay, they are becoming opener to the foreign investor to drop those very radical policy away. So I think this is a very active message. And another active message is the Mnangagwa has mentioned. He would like to organize a very inclusive government, even though when the party election, the opposition party, they are not saying, okay, the losers are to be marginalized completely. So those two, one is for the unity in the country domestically. Another is open the door wider for foreign investors. So with those good policies forward, if can be proceeded forward in a very smooth way, I think that will be a new era will come.
So let's talk about the political transition and how it could affect Zimbabwe's relations with Western countries, in particular the United Kingdom.
Oh yes, this will be a new beginning as well, because we all know during the past 37 years rule by the Robert Mugabe and his country's relation with Western society as a whole, particularly UK, is becoming deteriorated, and Zimbabwe has been quit from the Commonwealth as well. But now the new government is saying, okay, open the door widely to all those investments coming from abroad and also from the UK. So UK is also very much welcome back to the Zimbabwe. I think the UK has the long history there. Personally, I know a lot of British scholars. They have been doing research about Zimbabwe, for many, many years. So those know-how about Zimbabwe is there, not vanished at all. So I think also those interests also there. So with this policy, like more open, more inclusive, I think the relations between Zimbabwe and with the West, with UK, will be also better off.
Mm-hmm. And what about the future of other African countries? How could Zimbabwe's political transition influence other African countries as well?
Yeah, other African countries, particularly those countries, they have a long time, those, governor, the head of the state, and also some countries, they have the people's living livelihood is getting worse. Those countries, they should learn two things, particularly from Zimbabwe's political transition. One is the one person's rule, if stay there for like 30 years, 40 years, so the longer is not the better thing. So people maybe, they are not so happy for that. And also the governance itself, you cannot bring in the new thoughts, new ideas. So that's the thing you should learn from Zimbabwe. And second is economic development things. I think that matters very much. Like youth, Africa has been regarded as a youth continent because 80% higher, those people are the ages under like 30 years old. So those youth people, but most of the countries, they cannot create many jobs for those youth people. Okay. So job creation, economic things do matters very much.
All right, Ms. Ho Wen-ping, thank you very much. Well, New York will also welcome in the new year in just a few minutes, less than 10 minutes now. We'll be bringing you a live report of the celebration at Times Square where people are waiting for the annual ball drop, so stay tuned for that. And several new laws take effect in China on January 1st. These laws will help the government better tackle pollution, boost economic development, and ensure nuclear safety. Let's take a look. The Environmental Protection Tax Law is China's first green tax legislation. It replaces the pollution discharge fee system with a new environmental protection tax. The revised Water Pollution Prevention and Control Law strengthens monitoring and government responsibility and imposes tougher punishments. The law mandates that local governments should set time limits to improve water quality. Under the revised law of the PRC on the promotion of small and medium-sized enterprises, the government shall arrange special funds and use monetary policy instruments to boost the development of small and medium-sized enterprises.